Good evening. Welcome to the Town of Raleigh Municipal Lighting Plant Board of Directors meeting for September 11th, 2013. Before we open the agenda, I would like to have a moment of silence and a tribute to the Trentinis. Bob, do you still have that speech that you gave on Monday?
Yes, I do.
Would you mind doing that again?
Sure, I'll do that.
It was very moving.
Okay. (9/11), American Airlines Flight 11. Seat 30A, occupied by James Trentini. Seat 30B, occupied by Mary Trentini. Seat 28B, occupied by Laurie Olson Nera. Total flight complement, 76 passengers, 11 crew, 5 hijackers. 7:59 a.m., Flight 11 takes off from Boston Logan International Airport. 8:45, Flight 11 hits Tower 1 of the World Trade Tower. Statistics, statistics, statistics. As long as we live and breathe, may 9/11 never be just another cold statistic. For this day is about real people, about our fellow citizens who were cut down in their prime, and is also about the Americans who rose up to all that is noble and good about America. September 11, 2001 was a beautiful September morning along the East Coast. The children had just returned to school, and most of us were looking forward to the change in season. Jim and Mary Trentini had delayed their trip to visit their children and grandchildren in California because Jim had jury duty on September 10th. Jim, a retired school teacher, and Mary, a retired school secretary, were in the full season of retirement, enjoying their golden years together. Laurie Olson Nera was returning to her family in California after visiting her mother in Raleigh. Laurie was a loving daughter, mother, and grandmother, and full of life. They are but three of the names of the 2,977 who were lost to an unspeakable evil, and those three names from Raleigh will ever link us to that terrible day 12 years ago. At around 8:50 a.m., little by little, we all started to learn that something terrible had happened in New York City. A plane had hit the World Trade Center. At first, it was a terrible accident until the second plane hit Tower 2. Then shock and disbelief set in when we learned that the Pentagon had also been hit. But at that moment, when all seemed lost and hopeless, America began to strike back, not with the might of its armed forces, that would come later, but by ordinary citizens. A struggle in the skies above Pennsylvania aboard Flight 93 was about to ensue, and with it, the war's first battle cry, "Let's roll." That struggle ended in the crash of Flight 93 into a rural cornfield outside Shanksville, Pennsylvania. That first resistance in the skies prevented additional loss of life at its intended target, the Capitol building in Washington, D.C. But that was not the only heroism of 9/11. As thousands fled the World Trade Center, hundreds of firefighters of the New York Fire Department, police officers of the New York Police Department, and Port Authority officers rushed into the towers to save thousands of lives. In Tower 1, one of those in command was Battalion Chief Joseph Pfeiffer, who began giving orders to firefighters to go up into the tower and begin rescuing victims. As his eyes looked across the lobby, he looked into the eyes of his brother, Lieutenant Kevin Pfeiffer, of Engine 33. Chief Pfeiffer later said, "It was a look I will never forget, for it was the last time I saw Kevin." Such were the looks that first responders gave each other that morning. As events were starting to unfold, we watched in disbelief as the towers came down, knowing fully well that we were watching the death of thousands of our citizens. Our emotions ran the gambit from grief to sadness and into anger. Today that wound is still there, and every anniversary we see the emotional scar it has left on each of us. Last year, the 11th, I made the speech last year. Last year, on the 10th anniversary of September 11th, I thought about that scar while I was at church. As I listened to the first reading, which was chosen many years ago, it was from the book of Sirach, and it said, "Wrath and anger are hateful things, yet the sinner hugs them tight." I believe that those words can speak to us about how we remember 9/11. By that I mean, if we grab hold of that wrath and anger, we become just like the terrorists who so fully embraced hate that they were willing to shed innocent blood. Or we can remember and cherish the memories of the victims. We can also remember the first responders and those of Flight 93 who ran into dangerous path and were willing to lay down their lives for their fellow citizens. Today, as we reflect back on 9/11, with all that we know about that day, we can truly say wrath, anger, and hate may lurk in the evil shadows of darkness, but it was love, compassion, and courage of the heroes of that day that will ever shine on 9/11. Let us never forget. God bless America.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you.
The reason I did that, Dan and Eric, is because Jim Trentini was a member of the Municipal Light Board for 7 years, 1974 to 1980. So we haven't really had a meeting in the last 12 years that fell on the 11th of September. So I just wanted to make that aware to the people out there, the Raleigh residents, that he contributed to the operation of this department during that time. And obviously I knew him, I knew his wife, and it's a sad situation that this had to happen. And that being said, I would like to just offer a moment of silence for remembrance. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
Okay, we will open the agenda, and the first item on the agenda is citizens' query, and it'll be from 7:08 to 7:18. If we have some citizens that want to come in and talk to us about anything, they're welcome to come. This is a new item agenda, so we'll tell the people that are watching tonight that if you have a question or want to come down and get some information, we will have this citizens query on each agenda, and you can come to the meeting and sit there and ask us some questions, and we'll do our best to answer them for you. The item number 2 is review and accept minutes from prior meetings. And I guess from the last meeting that we had, we weren't able to accept the minutes from that meeting because we had an absent member. And I think we still have an absent member from the same minutes. So the minutes we're going to be accepting tonight are the August 14th, is that correct?
Yep.
August 14th Commissioners meeting. Did you get a chance to read them, Bob?
Yes, I did.
Okay, is there any questions or answers or
No?
submissions or anything? So I'll entertain a motion then to accept the minutes.
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes.
I'll second it. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. You got the master here.
I forgot my pen. Thank you, Bob.
Sorry.
Thank you, Warren.
Dan, thank
Thank
you.
you, gentlemen.
Agenda item number 3, Central Street Solar Project Update.
Just like to address the board about the Central Street Solar Project. We've been waiting for our contractor to kind of tell us what's going on with the DOER. And as of yet, I emailed back and forth with him over the month, and as of yet, there is no decision or final decision from the DOER as to what the SREC program will look like. So I really don't have, that's the only update I have, is the fact that nothing is really going on or moving forward with the project at this time.
At this time, okay. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but the Board of Selectmen, at the meeting on Monday night, agreed to the pilot payment.
Okay,
There's not a dollar with it, not a dollar amount, but the concept of a pilot payment, the Board of Assessors agreed, and so it will be a pilot payment for the payment in lieu of taxes.
okay,
And that just needs to get calculated at some point. So
Okay.
that's going forward.
all right.
Okay?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Item number 4. Daniels Road property update and discussion.
As you may have seen in the paper, I put a legal notice in the local paper to
Mhm.
have the barn demolished at the Daniels Road property. It is an unsafe structure, so I did receive 3 quotes back, and I signed and agreed to the one of the 2 lower quotes. But I'll give you a packet here that kind of shows what. And I'm not sure if you saw it, but that's the ad. And these are the 3 quotes that I received. The last one being is the one I signed.
Okay. Okay, so you accepted the last one?
I accepted the last one.
Okay.
Yes.
Just the middle one, Bob.
Okay. That's the last one.
That's the last one. I guess that's the company we'll be using.
Keep it really-
Do you need a vote on that, Dan, to accept that?
I don't believe so. I already
Okay.
signed the contract with them, but I
Okay.
just wanted to make the board aware of what was going on with the barn.
Mhm.
And I did also, in the ad, include language that says the project will be a prevailing wage project.
Yeah.
When I signed the
Mhm.
contract with the contractor, I did give him a copy of the, if you want to look at it, the 37-page
No, no.
prevailing wage.
We are very familiar with that.
Okay, so-
We deal with it all the time.
Yeah.
So this, I did give this to the contractor along with the contract, so
Okay.
when the project starts moving along, I will be requesting from him wage scales or
Yeah.
actual confirmation that he did follow the wage scale,
Yeah,
so.
yeah, no, that's, years ago, you used to be able to get away with it. You can't do that anymore.
Right.
You really can't. You gotta follow what's going,
Mm.
Yeah.
what the requirements are. You really do. So,
And along with the same discussion, I think we should have discussion, and I think Commissioner Snow would like to talk about as far as the house itself and where we want to go with the property.
Yeah.
And maybe have a general discussion, maybe bring Bob up to speed as far as what we've discussed in the past,
Mhm.
and maybe, kind of discuss what we want to do in the future with the property.
well, I think Bob is familiar with basically what we
Oh,
were
yes.
trying to do in the beginning. And there was some discussion with the previous board, and a suggestion made, and I actually made the suggestion that we talk to the housing authority and see if they would be at all interested in converting it into a low-income housing unit for the Raleigh Housing Authority. That didn't meet with too much agreement, but it was tabled at that time. And then there was some other issues that took place there. I'm not sure we want to get into those at this point, but. And then because of the state funding and the way the housing authorities were being run in the McLaughlin case, there was some question as to whether there'd even be a housing authority in the town of Raleigh at that point. That seems to have gone away at this thing. I don't think they're going to really change that at all at this point. It doesn't seem that they will anyway. So I don't know, we'd probably need Ken here too to get into the
Right.
discussion, but I still think, we don't need the property immediately. At least I don't think we do.
No, and I did have, we can probably toss around a few ideas as far as what the board feels that we should do with the property, and kind of, I'll give you my opinion on the property itself, and we can kind of, come to a consensus about where we want to go with the property.
Yeah.
And I know you had mentioned the fact that we may want to lease it, whatever we could do to the
Well,
housing authority.
Yeah, and there was some question before about whether we could do that legally.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a way to do it. It would be what we would call licensing. Now, licensing isn't the best option, but it might work.
Okay.
It will work because you can do it that way. If we declare it surplus, then we would have to sell it to, give it to for $1 or whatever to the housing authority, and then we would not have the property.
Right.
We would lose the property. If we license it, they would be able to use it, and then when we needed it, we could go back in and take it back.
Okay.
So, and we've already got the legal opinions on that.
The property itself, there is a brook that runs kind of right through the middle of
Yes, it does.
the piece of the property.
Yeah.
And there was whether it was an official engineering study or there was some engineering done as to seeing if we could locate the actual RMLP facilities on the lot.
I believe the previous manager did that.
Yeah, and it was going to be very difficult with the brook there to actually come up with a building that would be better than what we have right now. I think we were going to end up with basically the same square footage. It would be new,
Mm-hmm.
but the same square footage as we have currently.
Right. Well, if I remember the plan correctly, Dan, it was actually less square footage than what we have on a single level on Summer Street.
Mm-hmm.
If you put in 2 levels, then you could increase the square footage, obviously. But that adds other issues such as elevators and handicap accessibility and things like that to it.
Right.
So, I mean, it was Mr. Daniels' wish when we didn't really purchase the property, when we got permission to use the property, that his handicapped son have a place to live.
Mm-hmm.
And the deal that we worked out, which was, I gotta be honest, was complicated. I mean, it would have been better, and I'll admit that I was the manager at the time that this took place. It would have been much easier just to go in and give him whatever the place was worth and buy the property and be done with it. But he didn't want to do that. He wanted to make sure his son was taken care of. So we got the land, it's about an acre, that the substation itself was built on for the payment of his real estate taxes.
Okay.
That was the deal. We would pay his taxes. His son would have a place to live. And like I said, his son was somewhat handicapped. And he felt that by doing it this way, his son would actually have a place to live, he would have some money, and there would be nobody that could take it away from him.
Okay.
Or cheat him out of it would be what would happen, what he thought might happen. So that's the way it came down, and it was a life estate. And unfortunately, his son passed away about a year or so ago. And now we have the property. So, and if we don't, to me, the house is not that bad. I mean, it definitely needs some updating.
Mm-hmm.
They had done quite a bit of work. Actually, he got some Mass Save grants to put in new windows, to insulate the house, to put in a new heating system. So, and the roof itself wasn't that old. They had done that just prior to a year or so before he passed. So it just seems a shame that, you know, there's people out there that need housing.
Mm-hmm.
We have a housing authority that could operate the system and make it useful, that we just destroy it. I just couldn't.
No, and I don't think demolition is something that I would suggest.
Right.
You know, I may suggest, or my opinion would be to maybe, you know, keep the property in the back behind, from the river back,
Mhm.
as our property, and for expansion if we ever need to for the substation or
Yeah.
whatnot. But, you know, maybe look into, I think I'd mentioned this at a meeting before, subdividing the property. And that way, you know, we get the kind of the best of both worlds. We get to keep some of the property, and we get to whether we license it to the housing authority or declare it surplus and give it to the town, and then the town can give it to the housing authority, and
Mhm.
that way somebody would benefit that way as well. I think we just need to work out those final options as far as what we want to do, with the property, because we definitely don't want to get into the landlord-tenant situation. That's,
No, I don't, we're
that's
not,
better for somebody else
we're
to
not
deal
equipped to
with.
do that, and
Right.
that was kind of the reason we suggested the housing authority, was let them, that's their business.
Mhm.
They have a maintenance person and they take care of those things. The only, not really against it, but the only thing I could suggest was, I hate to have somebody else control it, particularly if we get to the point where we need to expand the substation, and then we have people protesting that,
Okay.
I know when we were actually building the substation, we had a group, not a big group, but a group of people that came into one of our public hearings for it, that was complaining about the EMF and all these types of things.
Yeah.
So, it's, even though it's existing, for some reason people come to a nice rural community like Rowley. I don't know what they see, but it must be just, they got blinders on, because they move in and all of a sudden there's a machine shop next door that's been there for the last 20 years. And all of a sudden it's making too much noise, it's keeping us awake at night. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. And I'm not sure we want to get into those kind of issues.
Yeah, totally
You know, I mean,
understand.
it's, and it happens quite often. Herrick Farm, they put in a small subdivision up there next to the farm, and the first thing they were
Mhm.
complaining about was the cows out in the pasture. They weren't wearing diapers, and it's just, I mean, it just doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, what are people looking at when they go and look at that house to buy? Don't they look around and see what's there? It's just, I don't know, it's just human nature, I guess, and that would be the only concern I'd have on that.
Okay, all right.
You know.
Well, like I said, it's something that we need to keep
Mhm.
talking about.
Oh, absolutely.
Because the property's not, it's gonna degrade further without any kind of
Exactly.
upkeep.
And I think maybe times have gone by. Maybe once we get a full board, we can discuss this again, and maybe get a vote to approach the housing authority again
Okay,
and see if they are still willing. I mean, if they're not willing, then we need to back up and start over again.
Also, with the demolition of the barn, in the barn is the furnace.
Okay. No,
Okay.
I think the
It's-
furnace is in the garage.
I'll make sure, no, I don't think there's anything in the
Okay,
barn.
okay, so I thought someone told me that the furnace
I
was.
think the furnace is in the house,
Okay.
but I will make sure of that before the demo takes
Yeah,
place.
at one point, I thought it was in the
Is it?
garage,
I think it was in the kitchen.
in the kitchen.
In the
Okay.
kitchen?
Yeah.
Okay. And that's
Yeah.
another issue we have to address.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is the interior of the house, because of the issues that
Right.
took part
Well,
a year and a half ago.
and you bring up a good point, because if we are the owners of the property, I'm not sure, I mean, without expending light department funds to bring the house back to what it was,
Mhm.
The housing authority has other avenues to get money in to rehab the house.
Exactly.
Mhm.
You know, I don't think we'd be able to get those monies if we're the owner of the property.
Right.
So we either would probably have to use light department funds or find another way around that.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, what transpired on the property, to the property, is, a delicate matter about, if, well, we'll have to decide that. And I think we need a full board discussion on that,
Hmm.
where to go.
Yeah, I'm willing to, wait and see, and, I just thought I would bring it up on tonight, and we can
Mhm.
kind of
Yeah, no, I
start
no,
the
I-
discussion.
It's been kind of sitting out there, not really being talked about, so I think and now that things are kind of changing, it might be a good time to just make a decision as to what we actually do with it.
Okay.
Because I've been approached several times by people around town still asking about the house and about what transpired, okay? And there was that audit that was out there that came back, so that all these things are still hanging, so I think probably we need a full board to discuss that also.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay.
sounds good. Is there anything else, Hannah, on that, or?
Nope, that was it.
Okay. All right, item number 5 is a rate study questions.
As we've talked about in previous meetings, and it was suggested that we have a rate study done, or a cost of service and a rate study done for the municipal department, because it hasn't been done since 2006. And I've been talking to a couple of different people about what we want to do or what we want to accomplish with the rate study. So what I want the commissioners to do is basically think about, there's a few things that we're going to ask or we're going to want to accomplish with this rate study. Rate equity, which is balancing the different classes so
Mhm.
one class doesn't subsidize the other class.
Exactly, yeah.
Things like that. There's currently our base rate and our PPA, or purchase power adjustment clause rate, is kind of, I'm not going to say it's wrong, but one rate, which is the regular rate, is 5 cents a kilowatt hour, and the purchase power adjustment clause rate is like 9 cents a kilowatt hour.
Yes, it's out of balance.
Generally, it's just the opposite, and I think probably in 2006 that was kind of corrected, but
Mhm.
there have been a lot of changes in the industry since
Mhm.
that time. So what I think we need to do is kind of refresh what we want to do with the rates, and what we want to, what we want to accomplish with the rates.
Well, obviously, we want them as low as we can possibly get them, but
Right.
sometimes that's not possible. But we definitely need to look at them, I think. And I agree with you on the rate equity. I mean, we definitely need to make sure that those rates are bringing back in what the cost of service is for those rates.
Mm-hmm. We have different avenues to collect from different classes. We have the customer charges. We have another thing is the demand charges. Right now, we only have one class that has a demand charge. I would, suggest to the board, when we really seriously get into this, is adding another demand class, a small commercial demand class, which we don't have currently. And that's something we can talk about when the rate study is really starting to roll. But I just want, I did write some notes, but have the board think about, when those questions come up, so we can keep rolling with the project and not extend the project beyond what it should be.
Right. No, I definitely think we need to look at the rates. Hopefully, when we get them straightened out, we'll find that we may be a little overcharging. I don't know if that's the case or not, but
Well, currently, right now, as of the end of July, we're under collecting because we are negative income as of the end of July.
okay.
As you know, Bob, that will turn around
Oh, yeah.
in September because
It's hard to look at it on an
Yeah.
individual month because you need the whole year
Right.
to deal with it. I mean, weather is a huge issue
Mhm.
with as far as that revenue on a monthly basis goes. But yeah, I mean, but if the rates haven't been looked at since 2006, on the other side of the coin is if we're losing money, that's not good either.
No, but it's when you look at the whole year, we're not going to lose money.
Right.
But there are going to be months where we're going to fall behind. And that's only because right now we're going to start collecting money for July and August. Whereas, where we've already paid all those bills in July and August, all those high power bills, all those,
Yeah.
the general expense bills that we've already paid, those bills are generally higher in the summer,
Right.
Mhm.
but we just generally don't collect that revenue until, September.
Yeah, it goes into the shoulder month, which is generally kind of a
Right.
less income for that particular month.
Mhm.
So where you don't have heat and you don't have air conditioning.
So your high usage, really what, July 15th through September 15th?
On an average year, probably July and August are
August.
probably your highest months. You can get a real hot June where it goes June, July, and August, or you can look at a day like today where it's 95 and humid, and we sold a lot of
Right.
kilowatt hours today. But generally, July and August is the highest months, and that's when we generally peak.
And that's
is in
the
the
peak.
summer.
And for a long, long time, this system was a winter peaker
Hmm.
for a long time.
That's before air conditioners were so cheap. But,
Exactly. Exactly.
But again, it's the rate study. We need to make sure the base rate is correct.
Mhm.
The collecting balance from the classes, the account for the changes in the energy market. We need to account for those changes and now and in the future, because there are some things coming along that we need to account for. And if the rate structure is correct, we'll better be able to account for those. For instance, the Salem Harbor Power Plant that will be
Going
will
down.
may be built in Salem.
Yep.
I don't want to say yes because you never know what may happen, but that is going to affect us as far as the capacity market goes in 2016 and 17.
Salem always was they used it basically for voltage stabilization. When it was the coal plant.
Not anymore, though. I don't think the new plant would be. I think it's going to be more of an intermediate. Plant.
Okay.
It's going to
But
be
that's
a.
basically what they did with it, particularly for our area here, the King Street substation.
Mhm.
That's what they used it for, for voltage stabilization. And then they would run Ipswich's plant for the same reason, to keep the voltage up.
Well, during a forward capacity market auction, the ISO New England decided, well, there wasn't enough capacity to cover the NEMA load zone in 2016.
Okay.
So what happened was they needed to do the bidding for capacity.
Mm.
So Footprint decided that they were going to bid in for capacity for 2016, and they bid a real high number. Seeing no other capacity was bid in, and the ISO was short, they had to take that bid for capacity,
Mhm.
which was $15 a kilowatt month. So that cost is going to be passed along to everybody
Coming
within
up.
the NEMA load zone.
Now, has usage has gone down, right? Because of energy efficiency,
I think it's stayed status quo, really.
status quo?
Um,
Because they were thinking about they were gonna need almost like a power plant a month in order to keep up across the country. But then with energy, energy efficiency and everything else, it really stabilized.
yes,
Okay.
it's pretty much stabilized. It hasn't. I don't think you've seen a huge decline in usage, but you haven't seen a huge increase either.
Increase,
Yeah.
which is good.
And of course, the other issue is gas.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the wintertime, there's not enough gas in the northeast region here to supply everything. It's starting to get into that problem, so.
Well, now with fracking and everything else, that.
Well, hopefully they get it up, but the problem is I don't think there's enough transmission.
There's
in
not
this
area
area.
Gas transmission into
Transmission
the
lines up here
area
in the northeast.
because what will happen is plants that run natural gas in the wintertime, they don't secure the gas ahead of time. They don't sign that contract.
Mm-hmm.
So what happens is they use it for heating before they'll use it for generating power. So the natural gas plants will be told to burn oil if they can,
Okay.
and if they just burn gas, they'll be curtailed, and the gas will go to heating customers instead.
Yeah,
So that's when you run into an issue in the wintertime, and that's why gas can go so high in the winter.
Have they converted the Everett plant down there? What is that, the something river plant? I wonder if they,
Mystic.
Hmm?
Mystic River.
Mayor's the Mystic.
Oh, the
yeah,
Mystic?
River plant.
No, that's still open.
That's still open.
Yeah.
They converted to gas or,
No, I don't believe so.
okay.
No, Salem, they're gonna
That's
try to
oil.
convert to gas, right? I know that they got their last load of coal,
Yeah, I saw that in the paper. Yeah,
but
so,
that thing's been coal, oil, coal. I mean, it's through the years that every 10 years they would convert it back to something else.
Well, the cry in Everett was always no more coal
Yeah.
with the oil. So I was wondering if they went to gas.
I really don't know on that part of it, but, so, I mean, a rate study will help us look into the future, or the people we hire for the rate study will be able to
Right.
kind of look
And-
into the future a little bit.
And because of the changes in the way energy is sold, we need to bring our rates up to correspond to that also.
Mhm.
When our rates were set, it wasn't the case, so we didn't have to forward-looking market.
You know, we may.
You signed a purchase power agreement and went on for 6-10 years.
Mhm. And we may go through this exercise, a cost of service study, and find out that we're just about where we need to be,
Exactly.
and without much correction at all. But
Mhm.
without doing this exercise, we don't know.
We don't know where we're at.
And,
I agree.
and I'll use last year as an example. We over collected last year, and we were actually above the 8% rate of return
Mhm.
for the department last year.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons I lowered the PPA in the beginning of the year is to account for that over collection last year. So that with a cost of service study and then a rate study, that shouldn't happen. We'll be able to better account for the revenue coming in, the
Yeah.
power supply costs and everything else. And,
Match it to the
Right.
expenses.
Right.
Continue on.
So what I'll do is I'll keep moving forward with this and maybe have somebody come in and come to a commissioners
Mhm.
meeting, talk about a rate study, and we'll have to probably get some RFQs as far as the rate study goes. I know it's going to be probably past the $10,000 mark, I'd assume.
Yeah.
So we'll have to get some
Mhm.
RFQs from different people and then move this process forward.
Right.
Hopefully by September now, October, November, December, maybe we'll be
Stop.
really getting into the meat of the rate study and talking to
Okay.
different people about what we want to do.
Good. Yeah, no, I think it's time. It's time to look at the rates,
Yeah.
one way or the other.
And also, I mean, in doing the rates now, doing a cost of service study and then maybe a rate study, we're building the model. I mean, so the upfront cost right now is going to be fairly high. In future years, if we decide that we want to really go through this exercise again, the model's built. So the cost is basically front-end loaded, and then in future years, they can use the same model and just basically rerun the numbers,
Rerun the numbers, rework them,
and
yeah.
come up with. So it's definitely less costly in future years. So, but I will continue in that endeavor and see what we can come up with in the next few months.
Okay, sounds good. Yep.
Any questions, comments, or?
No, I think that's the way we need to go.
Okay.
I think I mentioned to you when you first started that we needed to really look at them.
Mm-hmm.
Particularly with the percentage that we made last year. That wasn't too good. So
It was a little over. It wasn't terrible.
it wasn't way over the top, though. We should try to keep it in the parameters, I guess. Okay. Item number 6 is apprentice lineman rates of pay.
First of all, I'll tell you that I'm kind of new to this, having selectmen on the Board of Commissioners, but I'll kind of run through this. As selectmen, you may have seen a letter from me with the payroll that would have gone over last week concerning a couple of changes in the light department payroll.
Yeah.
And I did make a mistake in the apprentice lineman rates.
Okay.
So one employee was paid actually more than he should have been.
Well, I noticed the two figures were different. I wasn't quite sure why, but I did notice the two figures were different.
Yes. When I worked out the spreadsheet, because I started the new spreadsheet for the apprentice lineman rates. And Bob, just so you know, we have an apprentice line worker. I just lost the word I was going to say. Not a table, but we have a set rates for apprentice linemen from apprentice through first class lineman. And the first, I'm not sure the history with when you were Verizon, if you kind of use that same type of, but
We went from apprenticeships to helpers
okay.
because people didn't want to be called an apprentice, they wanted to be called helper, and then they didn't like the word helpers, so then they became just a $5 man. They didn't like a $5 man, so then they changed it to a new hire.
You guys were
They
much
did.
more sophisticated.
I didn't like that either. So then they just wanted to be called a technician.
Okay.
Around here, we were grunts.
So,
Well, you know how the IBW is.
but basically, we start as an apprentice, and there's 3 steps in each class.
Mhm.
It starts apprentice, then it goes to third class, second class, and then first class.
Okay.
And there's 3 steps in each class, and those rates are broken down. And every year, we factor in whatever raise the employees get, and we update this rate schedule. Well, it hadn't been done, so I updated the rate schedule, and when I calculated one of the formulas, I misplaced a number, and it basically increased one of the rates beyond where it should have been. That employee did receive that rate of pay for, I think it was just one pay period,
One pay period.
so 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So that rate has been corrected on the current payroll. And basically, I just want to say, I did make a mistake, and I apologize for that. And I talked to the employee, and the employee's fine with it, so
Okay.
there won't
good.
be any issues as far as that goes.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to make you aware of it, basically.
Well, thank you.
And just and the last title was journeyman.
Okay, is there anything
All right.
else?
Sounds good.
Kind of going through the agenda here. So,
Next meeting,
September, October,
9th, second Wednesday.
is the 9th.
That's
Sounds
the
good.
9th.
Eric? Okay.
Okay, so if there's no other business, no citizens are here tonight, so we don't have any inquiries there. If there's no other business, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
I will second that motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? We are adjourned.